This is Life Beyond the Ladder, and we're here to help you design a second act you can't wait to live. I'm Dalisia Coppersmith, inviting you to rewrite life on your own terms. I want to start today's episode with a question that might catch you off guard. What did you love to do when you were 7 years old? Not what you were, good at or what your parents encouraged, not what you won gold stars for or got a spot on the honor roll, but what did you actually love? It was probably whatever you were doing when you lost track of time. Did you build something in the backyard? Perform something in the living room? Was there something that you placed among your stuffed animals on your bed? Just imagination going on? Or did you disappear into something for hours on a Saturday afternoon? So take a moment with that and just imagine yourself as a 7-year-old and think of what would take you away to where you would lose track of time. Because today we're going somewhere most personal development conversations skip entirely. We're going back, way back, before the titles and the responsibilities, before the carefully constructed professional identity, before anyone told you what was practical or realistic or appropriate for someone like you. Back to the version of you that hadn't been edited yet. And we're going to treat what we find there as essential data about your truest identity. Here's something I believe with all my heart, and it comes from years of working with women who are redesigning their lives. Your childhood play was not random. It wasn't just a way to pass the time or some, phase to be outgrown. It was the earliest, clearest, and least filtered expression of who you actually are before the world had a chance to tell you who to be. You already knew. You showed it every day in the things you chose when no one was choosing for you. And then slowly you were redirected. Someone told you that you couldn't make a living doing that, or that it wasn't serious enough, or it was fine as a hobby but not a career, whatever you heard. Or maybe through accumulating the weight of expectation and obligation, you just stopped having time for it. And the thing you loved got buried. It's not gone, but buried. And that is an important distinction because buried things can be recovered. Let me tell you what I meant when I said childhood play is essential data. I'm not talking about the specific activity necessarily. Like if you loved playing with dolls, you should become a toy designer. It's not that literal. Or if you love building forts, you should become an architect. Though those are not bad ideas. But what I'm saying is the way you played tells you something deep and durable about how you're wired. The child who was always organizing the other kids, deciding who played what role, designing the game, making sure everyone knew the rules. That child has a natural orientation toward structure and leadership. The child who was always making things, drawing or building, crafting or creating, that child has a maker's instinct that doesn't disappear just because the crayons got put away. The child who was always performing, whether it was putting on plays or making up songs, maybe telling stories, she has a communicator inside her who is still very much alive. The little girl who is always taking care of someone, the injured bird or the younger sibling, maybe a friend who is sad, that child has a healer's instinct, a genuine orientation toward the well-being of others. None of these instincts went away. They just went underground for a lot of us. And what's fascinating and what I've seen again and again is that the things you are most drawn to do in your second act often rhyme with what you love to do at 7. Maybe not identically, but structurally. And I'll give you some examples. The woman who spent her childhood organizing neighborhood productions ends up decades later craving work that involves bringing people together around a shared vision. The woman who spent hours alone drawing intricate, detailed worlds finds that what she wants in her second act is deep, focused, creative work. Not meetings, not management, not the relentless performance of busyness. The woman who was always the one by herself, focusing on something that she loved. There's something else she's supposed to be doing now, and she realizes that. Or how about the one who was always the one that the other kids came to with their problems? That was me, by the way. Seemed like people were always trying to get me to fix something. Well, she discovers that the most meaningful work she can imagine involves sitting with other people in their hard moments and helping them find their way through. The thread is there. It's always been there. You just haven't been encouraged to follow it. So I want to give you something practical today. I want you to reconstruct your own play history. It's a simple exercise, and I want you to actually do it. And if you've been listening, you'll notice I'm giving you something very easy to do, just little exercises or things that you can journal. And I hope that you take the time to do that. So if you have a journal, a notebook, a scrap of paper, I'd love for you to do this exercise, not just think through it. Here's how it works. Think back as far as you can. Start around, let's say, age 5 or 6, and move through your childhood and into early adolescence. For each period, ask yourself these 3 questions. The first question: what did I do with free time when no one was directing me? Second question: what could I get completely lost in? And I'll give you a hint on this one. Sometimes it was our favorite subject in school or our favorite class to go to. But even if it was outside of school, what could you get completely lost in? And the third question: what did I make or organize or perform? Could be what you led or something you cared for. So if there's something tangible you can think of in that period of your life, write down everything that comes up. Don't edit it. Don't dismiss anything as too small or too silly. Don't decide in advance what's relevant. Just write. And then when you have your list for each period of your life, however you define that, look at it the way you'd look at evidence, not nostalgia. Evidence. Ask yourself, what do these things have in common? Is there some orientation toward people or toward things, toward making or toward connecting? Maybe you see a pattern here for leading or maybe toward creating. Could be caring or building. So whatever that is, just allow yourself to study things and see what emerges, what pops off of the page for you. And then this is the part that matters the most. Ask yourself where that orientation shows up in you today, because I promise you it does. It may be frustrated. It may be underutilized. It may be expressing itself in, little ways that you've been dismissing as impractical or beside the point. Could even be something you're being criticized for, but it is there. And in your second act, you get to stop dismissing it. A woman I worked with, let's call her Carol, she'd spent, I don't know, the better part of 3 decades in financial services. She's really good at her job, of course, respected. She was well compensated. By every external measure, she was successful. And absolutely certain in the quiet of her own mind that something was missing. So when we did this exercise together, she went back to her childhood and started listing things almost immediately. She'd run a neighborhood newspaper at age 8, I think it was. She had written and illustrated a book of poetry at like age 10. She kept detailed journals, all through her teenage years. So think about this. She was in financial services, but when we went back to her childhood, look at all of this writing that was going on. She'd even organized a school literary magazine in high school, and she fought to include voices that the administration didn't think really belonged there. So she looked at this list and, said kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say with regret, but it was almost like there was a little sadness because she'd realized something that she could have been doing all along, at least more. She said, I've always been a writer and an advocate. And then she was quiet for a little while. And she asked herself, why did I stop? Well, the answer, of course, has to be that somebody along the way told her, whether directly or indirectly, that writing wasn't a career, that she was too smart for something so impractical. So the thing that she loved most about herself wasn't the thing that would make her successful. So she filed it away for 30-ish years. And where is Carol now? Well, she's in the process of building a second act that puts writing and advocacy right at the center of her life. Not instead of her financial expertise, but because of it. She's using what she knows to say things that need to be said to people who need to hear them, and in a voice that's unmistakably her own. She told me recently that she feels for the first time in a long time like herself, like her whole self, not some version or some slice of herself, not a performance, but she really feels like herself. And that is what happens when you follow the thread back to who you were before the world had a chance to edit you. You don't become that child again, but you do reconnect with something essential, something that's been waiting patiently, without complaint, for you to come back and claim it. So here's what I want you to leave with today. What did you build or lead or imagine as a child that you've never let yourself return to? What was the thing that you loved before anyone told you it wasn't practical? Where was that thread in your life? Where is it right now? And what would it look like to follow it, even a little, if imperfectly, even just as an experiment in the direction of who you've always been underneath everything else? Your second act doesn't have to be invented from scratch, my friend. The sketch, if not the whole blueprint, the sketch was drawn a long time ago by a 7-year-old who knew exactly who she was, who you were, and still are. I'm Dalisia Coppersmith, and this is Life Beyond the Ladder. See you soon.